Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another review of a recent horror film, at least within the last decade. Because despite the marathons I've been doing, like right now, I'm looking into the Vincent Price films. Up until recently, I've decided to, or as of recently, because I've missed out on like the whole last decade of horror films. And I've noticed there's quite some gems. I mean, Witch, Lighthouse, which I saw when it came out. Don't Breathe, I enjoyed. It Follows. I've been catching up on this last decade because there is a lot of good horror movies. So I've been doing those kind of randomly throughout my marathons, which I will continue Vincent Price. This is one that I heard the name when it came out. I've known about it since it came out, but I didn't know a thing about it. It came out in 2014, a film from Australia. That is The Babadook. Of course, this is the Scream Factory version, so that's actually the cover that it was when I got it. But I like that cover more. Yeah, it was put out by IFC. They have a lot of great titles. It was written and directed by Jennifer Kent, who I'm not really sure of anything else she's done. She did do the film The Nightingale, which I heard was a pretty powerful film. It's a period drama. Which, I mean, this very much is a horror film. It's a psychological horror film or thriller, but it feels like a drama. It's a very slow-burning, dark drama. But the scenes that are horror are very well done. Like, I enjoyed this movie. But similar to The Witch, just because of a lot of other shit that's come out this last decade, that's exactly what it is. Shit. Like, the reason why I never saw The Witch was because I never really paid attention, for one. But because when I heard The Witch, my brain just went to The Nun and just shitty, supernatural, paranormal films like that. This one's not like that. Something tells me I've heard of this name and this character from like a creepypasta, but I could be wrong. Essentially, we have this woman, Amelia, played by Essie Davis, who is just a worn out, exhausted, end of her rope widow and single mother of Samuel, who is a fucking nightmare child. I know I find a lot of child characters annoying in films, and I don't really care to see them. But this kid, I think you're supposed to hate, and he makes it very easy. Like, I can't say anything bad about him because I know you're supposed to be annoyed and frustrated with him, and the kid does a great job at that. So, even though he drove me nuts, he succeeded at what he was supposed to do. You know, he builds these contraptions, like weapons, like a crossbow, or this like catapult thing for balls. He likes magic. He says what comes to his head, no matter what it is. In trouble at school, always embarrassing her in front of, work, school, friends, her own sister, which I think the Aunt Claire character is her sister. But one night he wants her to read this book called Mr. Babadook. It's this big pop-up book which I like the look of the book. I want to get the illustrator's name because he definitely deserves. um, he's actually an illustrator, and he had no idea how to make pop-up books, but he rose to the challenge because he wanted to be a part of it. And I can find the guy's name here. I should have done this first, I know. Alex something. It says production designer Alex Holmes, but I don't think that's him. I'm sure it was Alex something. But anyway, I really like the look of the book. It's got this creepy Tim Burton look to it. And pretty much about how, you know, the Babadook always wants to get in. He has this, what he calls a silly disguise. And once I'm in, you'll wish you were dead. And the rest, this is kind of like how I wished Hereditary played out. Because it plays out like, so, like most of these movies, the son, whenever something happens, like, there's chunks of glass in her stew, or, you know, like he's at his cousin's birthday party and he pushes her out of the treehouse, busting her nose. She was making fun of him, but you know, he always says, "The Babadook did it. The Babadook did it," and she's at her wit's end. Until eventually the Babadook gets in, which it gets in her, and then you sort of have like this Shining third act. I haven't really heard much about this film as being pretentious, like say the films of Robert Eggers or Ari Aster. It's very deep, very metaphorical. Because I mean, like prior to the Babadook getting in, there's several scenes where she's just staying up watching TV, and there's an old cartoon where a wolf puts on sheep's skin, and so you know that's like the Babadook does that. He doesn't just have like a coat and a top hat. He can get inside, possess people. That's his disguise. Also, while she's watching TV, you get a bunch of shots. Like there's the demasking scene of Phantom of the Opera. You get parts of the Drop of Water segment from Black Sabbath by Mario Bava, which my Black Sabbath band shirt finally came in. Always been one of my favorite bands. Love Black Sabbath. Other German expressionist films that have the Babadook superimposed, like I believe one of them is from Dr. Caligari, but I could be wrong. So there's a lot of metaphors about, you know, disguises and sheep and wolf's clothing, which can also mean, you know, to disguise in what one is familiar and comfortable with. In this case, mother and son. The ending I was a little iffy on. Like, if you remember my review for Hereditary, my only issue with that film was the ending. With this, I think this leans a little bit more towards The Shining, where, okay, is she really just a broken woman? Is she really kind of lost and losing her sense of reality? And is the Babadook even real? I feel it's more open to interpretation, as is The Shining, whereas Hereditary just had, you know, that ending. Because the ending where it's like, I'm going to say spoilers, but I definitely recommend this. It's a slow burn. It feels like a drama. The horror scenes are few and far between, but when they're there, they are there. No cheap jump. It's not a boo jump scare movie. It's, you know, the Babadook is either in the background or the shadows with no music. You know, it's more creepy, and it earns its scares very well. But I'm gonna say spoilers here. The whole thing about them keeping the Babadook down in the basement, how they feed it worms, and how it even tries to attack her, even though we don't see it. She calms it down. It's like, and we see that she's more comfortable around him, and a more understanding and attentive mother. It's like, okay, she's got him under control, but now the real nightmare child is in the basement. Or is it all in her head? I like that interpretation. I don't quite know how I feel. Like, if that is the case, that it is ambiguous and you can take that away from it, then that's fine. I know Jennifer Kent was inspired by several films, like John Carpenter's The Thing, Halloween, Chainsaw Massacre, Carnival of Souls, The Shining, Vampire from 1932, Nosferatu, and the Swedish original, Let the Right One In. I see all of those in here. I really do. Also inspired, by David Lynch and Polanski. I see that in here as well. So Jennifer Kent is a very capable writer and director. She can take her influences, definitely represent them respectfully and appropriately while creating her own thing. I thought Essie Davis did a great job as Amelia. You really feel for her. And this kid is such a little shit that it's almost rewarding when the whole third act comes around and she's possessed by a Babadook. But yeah, I mean, it is a very metaphorical film, mostly about the whole sheep, disguise, wolf in sheep's clothing. It's not, some of it is more upfront and obvious than others. But I really enjoyed this movie. I like these slow burn, no jump scare, really take its time to earn the scares like this one does. I loved the look of the book. It's like if Tim Burton had a nightmare, that's probably what it would be like. A lot of my favorite movies and filmmakers are represented in here. Like I said, very much like The Shining. And I like how, you also buy mental illness. It's sort of like in Hereditary, grief. She's living with grief. She works hard and, she occupies her time so she won't think about her late husband. But her son is a constant reminder. There's like that resentment towards her. He's a constant reminder of her husband. And he's a fucking nightmare to deal with. So, I buy the theory that she could be suffering a mental break, and it's manifesting itself as the Babadook. Or the Babadook is real. I mean, I like to look at it as both ways. The scares were very well done. I mean, scenes with her, I can't remember what they're called. Is it an armoire? The big, tall dresser with the doors. That opens up, but it's in shadow. You just kind of like see his hands coming out. There was some CGI, which, like, when we see the Babadook climbing around the ceiling really fast, I thought that still looked right. The apparition with the husband getting his head cut in half, CGI, that looked kind of hokey, but that's towards the end. And if a movie has done so well and earned everything else, I can live with a little shitty CGI. But yeah, I think it made like $10 million. It made 10.3 on a $2 million budget. So it made money, but it wasn't like a smash hit. It got rave reviews. It holds a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. And I would say this is another gem from the 2010s. I mean, the more I look into this past decade, especially compared to the 90s or even the 2000s, the first decade of the 2000s, this past decade has been splendid. I mean, going back, like, I hate ghost movies, newer ones, but Insidious, Conjuring, those are both great. I even enjoy Conjuring 2. This, Don't Breathe, It Follows, The Witch, The Lighthouse, Hereditary, except for the ending. I still need to see Get Out and Us and Midsummer, but this has been a great decade. Going back and actually checking them out, I was impressed with this. And it didn't bother me that it felt more like a psychological drama or thriller than really a straightforward horror movie. Because I also like movies that take their time with the characters. I think that's where the Polanski comes in. It takes its time with the characters and the story, so that it gets you invested, so that when the scary stuff actually happens, it's more of a payoff. And especially when it's done more this way, without loud music stings or camera zooms and like, boo, you're scared now. It was quiet, but now you're scared. You know, very mature, well-handled way. I really enjoyed it. I was impressed by this. But yeah, The Babadook 2014. Thank you for watching.